CIA fights drugs. CIA does not encourage drugs.
Well, I mean, it was actually one of the most monumental blunders of all time, if you think about it.
We have no evidence of a conspiracy by the CIA to engage in encouraging drug traffickers in Nicaragua or elsewhere in Latin America.
Deutsch was there because of the Gary Webb stories. The Gary Webb stories had sparked a national furor.
I would like to have Richie Ross's brother to speak, please.
The United States government turned their head and let this cocaine come into the United States of America.
Allow Gary Webb to have full access. This whole thing is orchestrated.
It was near pandemonium. It was about, I guess, 1,200 people in a standing room only in the auditorium, 2,000 people outside listening on loudspeakers. And it was very hard to keep control. I got called on finally, and I said to her very clearly, I was looking right at Deutsch.
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I worked South Central Los Angeles, and I will tell you, Director Deutsch, the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
I was able to name operations.
Director Deutsch, I will refer you to 3 specific agency operations known as Amadeus, Pegasus, and Watchtower. I have Watchtower documents heavily redacted by the agency. I was personally exposed to CIA operations and recruited by CIA personnel who attempted to recruit me in the late 70s to become involved in protecting agency drug operations in this country.
He stumbled and stammered and wrung his hands.
If you have information about CIA illegal activity in drugs, you should immediately bring that information to wherever you want, but let me suggest 3 places. The Los Angeles Police Department.
And of course my response was, I started there 18 years ago, sir, and they tried to kill me. Now what do you want me to do?
If this information turns up wrongdoing, we will bring the people to justice and make them accountable.
The crowd started chanting, we told you, we told you, we told you. And it was a great moment of unity. And it was a healing moment for me, because I'd been out alone for 18 years and didn't really know that kind of support was there for me either. The average person in South Central Los Angeles did not know anything about really how the CIA worked. They had an intuitive sense.
You have a private network run by George Bush and Ollie North, not the CIA. You won't find the records in the CIA. They're not there. They're in these privatized intelligence agencies. Will you pursue that? Will you pursue Ollie North and George Bush and the massive documentation? All these gentlemen, like this gentleman here, the co-defendant of Ricky Ross.
They needed the money to finance the war in Nicaragua. They had the link. We know that from records now that they sent Blandon, who was a CIA operative, CIA, to school for marketing the product which we now know is cocaine.
Me and Ricky Ross is waiting to get sentenced Tuesday. And what a judge gonna say to us come Tuesday?
May I just say that the question which was asked of us by the judge was Ricky Ross ever an agent or a contract employee?
I already knew that from the beginning of dealing with Danilo Blandon that he was sending supplies and things of that nature, computers and guns to Nicaragua to fight a war.
Ricky had already served a 5.5-year sentence for dealing crack, but was now given a second 20-year sentence after being set up by his former partner Blandon, while Oliver North walked away as a hero, wealthy and free to try his hand at politics.
Oliver North was being promoted by the Christian Coalition, and to them he was the last white hope that they were going to have for a right-wing Christian to run for U.S. Senate in Virginia.
During the 1986 Kerry Commission, Oliver North's crimes were exposed to the American public, and yet today Oliver North is not only a free man, he has his own show on the Fox News network.
It's amazing that Oliver North has his own TV show, and hopefully when I get out, I plan on having my own.
Talking to people in the ghetto, one dealer's name always came up when talking about crack's popularity. Freeway Ricky Ross became known as the Walmart of crack. Ricky's story has become as legendary as Tony Montana and Scarface, but with an even more bizarre twist. Ricky, who is currently serving time in the Texarkana Federal Prison, is scheduled for release in 2013. The prison denied me access with a camera, so I started interviewing Ricky over the prison payphone.
You know, a lot of people don't know what it's like to come in a house and there's nothing to eat. You know, to go to a supermarket and walk through the store and eat out of the cookies and things of that nature just to have something to eat. Cocaine came along, you know, and gave me a new horizon, I would say.
There's a new epidemic. Smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack.
I remember clearly one day in the late 80s, every single news network simultaneously running an identical news alert about the new, incredible, powerful, unbelievably cheap drug that was to sweep the nation.
This is crack cocaine.
Soon, every single black person living in the ghetto would sell his own mother for another hit of crack cocaine. It was like watching a strategically engineered ad campaign. Talk about perfect product placement. Did we mention it's cheap and strong and very addictive? Only $5 now, so stay away from it.
Let there be no mistake. This stuff is poison.
Crack cocaine epidemic. Crack cocaine epidemic.
So now, let me make it clear. I am not in no way trying to condone selling drugs. I'm not trying to excuse the actions of those people who decided to sell crack cocaine, who decided to sell drugs. I'm not trying to excuse it at all. I'm not condoning it at all. It was wrong. Let's call it what it is. It was wrong. It was completely wrong. But we have to understand the number one rule, the number one law of nature is self-preservation. And a person is going to do what they have to do to survive. It's just that simple. What do you tell a person who wants to be good, who wants to do the right thing, who doesn't want to sell drugs, who doesn't want to go rob or hurt anybody? What do you tell him when he goes out there into the world and he tries to get help and no one will help him? I know a lot of people say that, hey, this program is out there for black people, as if it's that easy. It's not that easy, especially as a black man. It's not easy to just get a job when you was 14, 15, 16, 18, and you made one mistake. You made one mistake. You sold drugs, you got caught, you went to jail. You said, okay, this is how the world works. I've learned my lesson. I'm going to come out. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to be a respectable member of society. I'm going to go get a job, and I'm going to be cool. But then when you go out to try to get a job, you have a felony arrest now. You have a record. Now you can't work nowhere. Nobody will hire you because you have that record. The closest, maybe the only place you can go to get a job is, McDonald's, Burger King. But if you're 23 now, 24, 25, 27, they're not going to hire you. They would rather hire, a high school kid fresh out of high school with no record. So what do? That law comes back into effect. Self-preservation. I have to take care of myself. I might have a family now. I might have to put food on the table and provide, what have you. So you got to do what you have to do, and this is what's going on. This is one of the things, and I got to give Obama credit for saying it. This is one of the things that he has addressed when he was talking about, this whole problem with prisons, this whole turnkey thing. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a turnstile, in and out, in and out. I'm not a big Obama supporter. I'm just saying he hit it right on the mark when he brought up this issue. And if he does do this whole prison reform thing, I don't think people realize and understand how huge this is going to be for black people, for African Americans, and for people who have this record, for people who made a mistake. Not just black people, white people as well, who have, sold drugs or made one mistake in their life when they was young that they wish they never did, that's following them, to this day. I mean, we have to change that. But this is the problem with the African American community. This is one of the reasons why, we stay here and we are in poverty, and why our men are coming in and out of the system, because they can't succeed, because the system is set up against them and it won't allow them to progress. So now, of course, if we are not allowed to progress, we will fall into poverty. And this is what has been going on. So now I want to show a video clip of Elizabeth Warren's speech that she gave last week. Now, this speech was it's one of the greatest speeches on racial injustice and I've ever heard, basically of all times to me. It's one of the best speeches. And I think that anybody who watched that and listened to what she said and what she pointed out, because she pointed out facts. This wasn't just a woman giving her opinion, and she's white, by the way. She wasn't just giving her opinion. This wasn't political. This was something that you could see the numbers that fit with exactly what she's saying. It fit exactly what she was describing. And I think that anybody who watched this video and listened to what she was saying was amazed by it and was like, you know, she used that platform to do something great. She could have said anything, but she said this. And I want to play it because I want people to, you know, listen to parts that she said. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but listen to what she's saying. And you can see that the situation that we are in today as African Americans comes directly from what she is describing. So, you know, take a look.
A half century ago, when Senator Kennedy spoke of the Civil Rights Act, entrenched racist power did everything it could to sustain the oppression of African Americans, and violence was its first tool. Lynchings, terrorism, intimidation, the 16th Street Baptist Church, Medgar Evers, Emmett Till. When Alabama Governor George Wallace stood before the nation and declared in his 1963 inaugural address that he would defend segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, he made clear that the state would stand with those who used violence. But violence was not the only tool of oppression. African Americans were effectively stripped of citizenship when they were denied the right to vote. The tools varied: literacy tests, poll taxes, moral character tests, grandfather clauses, but the results were the same. They were denied basic rights of citizenship and the chance to participate in self-government. And the third tool of oppression was deliberately to deny millions of African Americans economic opportunities solely because of the color of their skin. I have spoken often about how America built a great middle class. Coming out of the Great Depression from the 1930s to the late 1970s, as GDP went up, wages went up for most Americans. But there is a dark underbelly to this story. While median family income in America was growing for both white and African American families, African American incomes were far behind those of white incomes. In the middle 1950s, the median income for African American families was just a little more than half the median income for white families. And the problem went far beyond income. Take a look at housing. For most middle-class families in America, buying a home is the #1 way to build wealth. It's a retirement plan. Pay off the house and live on Social Security. It's an investment option. Use the house as a way to be able to finance a business. It's a way to help the kids get through college. It's a safety net if someone gets really sick. And if all goes well and grandma and grandpa can hang on to the house until they die, it's a way to leave wealth to the next generation, a boost up the economic ladder. And for much of the 20th century, that is exactly how it worked for generation after generation of white Americans, but not for Black Americans. Entire legal structures were created to prevent African Americans from building economic security through home ownership, legally enforced segregation, restrictive deeds, redlining, land contracts. Coming out of the Great Depression, America built a great middle class, but systematic discrimination kept most African American families from being part of it. State-sanctioned discrimination wasn't limited to home ownership. The government enforced discrimination in public accommodations, discrimination in schools, discrimination in credit. It was a long and spiteful list. Economic justice has not ever been sufficient to ensure racial justice. Owning a home won't stop someone from burning a cross in the front lawn. Admission to school won't prevent a beating on the sidewalk outside. But when Dr. King led hundreds of thousands of people on a march to Washington, he talked about an end to violence, access to voting, and economic opportunity. As Dr. King once wrote, the inseparable twin of racial injustice is economic injustice. The tools of oppression were woven together, and the civil rights struggle was fought against that oppression wherever it was found, against violence, against the denial of voting rights, and against economic injustice. The battles were bitter, and they were sometimes deadly. Fire hoses turned on peaceful protesters, police officers setting their dogs to attack black students, Bloody Sunday at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. But the civil rights movement pushed this country in a new direction. The federal government cracked down on state-sponsored violence. Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson all called out the National Guard, and in doing so, declared that everyone had a right to equal protection under the law guaranteed by the Constitution. Congress acted to protect the rights of all citizens to vote with the Voting Rights Act. And economic opportunities opened up when Congress passed civil rights laws that protected equal access to employment, to public accommodations, and to housing. In the same way that the tools of oppression were woven together, a package of civil rights laws came together to protect Black people from violence, to ensure access to the ballot box, and to build economic opportunity. Or to say it another way, Black lives matter, Black citizens matter, and Black families matter. And here we are, 50 years later, and we have made real progress toward creating the conditions of freedom. But we have not made enough progress. 50 years later, violence against African Americans has not disappeared. Consider law enforcement. The vast majority of police officers sign up so they can protect their communities. They are part of an honorable profession that takes risks every day to keep us safe. We know that. But we also know and say the names of those whose lives have been treated with callous indifference. Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Michael Brown. We have seen sickening videos of unarmed Black Americans cut down by bullets, choked to death while gasping for air, their lives ended by those who are sworn to protect them. Peaceful, unarmed protesters have been beaten. Journalists have been jailed. And in some cities, white vigilantes with weapons freely walk the streets. And it's not just law enforcement. Just look to the terrorism this summer at Emmanuel AME Church. We must be honest. 50 years after John Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. spoke out, after Ted Kennedy spoke out, violence against African Americans has not disappeared. And what about voting rights? 2 years ago, 5 conservative justices on the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, opening a floodgate of ever wider measures to suppress minority voting. Today, the specific tools of oppression have changed. Voter ID laws, racial gerrymandering, mass disenfranchisement through a criminal justice system that disproportionately incarcerates Black citizens. The tools have changed, but Black voters are still deliberately cut out of the process. Violence, voting, and what about economic injustice? Research shows that the legal changes in the civil rights era created new employment and housing opportunities. In the 1960s and 70s, African American men and women began to close the wage gap with white workers, giving millions of black families real hope that they could build economic security. But then, Republican trickle-down economic theory arrived. Just as this country was taking the first steps toward economic justice, the Republicans pushed a theory that meant helping the richest people and the most powerful corporations get richer and more powerful. I'll do just one statistic. From 1980 to 2012, GDP continued to rise, but how much of the income growth in the United States went to the 90% of America, everybody outside the top 10%, the 90% of America? Black, Latino, white? The answer is 0. None. Nothing. 100% of all new income produced in this country from 1980 to 2012 has gone to the top 10%. Today, 90% of America sees no real wage growth. For African Americans, who were so far behind earlier in the 20th century, this means that since the 1980s, they have been hit particularly hard. In January of just this year, African American unemployment was 10.3%, more than twice the rate of white unemployment. And after beginning to make progress during the civil rights era to close the wealth gap between white families and black families, in the 1980s, the wealth gap exploded, so that from 1984 to 2009, the wealth gap between white families and black families tripled. The 2008 housing collapse destroyed trillions of dollars in family wealth across this country. But the crash hit African Americans like a punch in the gut, because middle-class black families' wealth was disproportionately tied up in home ownership and not in other forms of savings. These families were hit harder by the housing collapse, but they also got hit harder because of discriminatory practices. Yes, discriminatory practices in the 21st century. Recently, several big banks and other mortgage lenders paid out hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, admitting that they illegally steered black and Latino borrowers into more expensive mortgages than white borrowers who had the same credit. Tom Perez, who at the time was the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, called it a racial surtax. And it's still happening. Earlier this month, the National Fair Housing Alliance filed a discrimination complaint against real estate agents in Mississippi after an investigation showed that those agents consistently steered white buyers away from interracial neighborhoods and black buyers away from affluent ones. Another investigation showed similar results in our nation's cities. Housing discrimination is alive and well in 2015. So there you have it. Violence, voting, economic justice. We have made important strides forward, but we are not done yet. And now it is our time to act. I speak today with full knowledge that I have not personally experienced and can never truly understand the fear, the oppression, and the pain that confronts African Americans every day. But none of us can ignore what is happening in our country. Not when our black friends, family, neighbors, literally fear dying in the streets. Listen to the brave, powerful voices of today's new generation of civil rights leaders, incredible voices. Listen to them say, if I die in police custody, know that I did not commit suicide. Watch them when they march through the streets. Hands up, don't shoot. Not to incite a riot, but to fight for their lives. To fight for their lives. This is the reality that all of us must confront, as uncomfortable and as ugly as that reality may be. It comes to us, once again, to affirm that Black lives matter, that Black citizens matter, that Black families matter. Once again, the task of safeguarding our communities from violence is back to us. We have made progress, but it is a tragedy when any American cannot trust those who are sworn to protect and serve. The pervasive and persistent distrust is not based on myths. It is grounded in the reality of unjustified violence. Policing must be a community endeavor, not just in some cities, but everywhere in this country. But police are not occupying armies. This is America, not a war zone. And policing practices in all cities, not just some, need to reflect that reality. Violence, voting. It is time to call out the recent flurry of new state law restrictions for what they are, an all-out campaign by Republicans to take away the right to vote from poor and Black and Latino American citizens who probably won't vote for them. The push to restrict, and that's what we have to call it out for what it is. The push to restrict voting is nothing more than a naked grab to win elections that they can't win if every citizen votes. Two years ago, the Supreme Court eviscerated critical parts of the Voting Rights Act. Congress could easily fix this, and Democrats in the Senate have called for the restoration of voting rights. Now it is time for Republicans to step up and support a restoration of the Voting Rights Act, or stand before the American people and explain why they have abandoned America's most cherished liberty. You bet. And while we're at it, we need to update the rules around voting. Voting should be simple. Voter registration should be automatic. Get a driver's license, get registered automatically. Nonviolent, law-abiding citizens should not lose the right to vote because of a prior conviction. Election day should be a holiday, so no one has to choose between a paycheck and a vote. Yep. Early voting and voting by mail would give fast food workers and retail workers who don't get holidays off a chance to proudly cast their votes. The hidden discrimination that comes with purging voter rolls and short-staffing polling places must stop. The right to vote remains essential to protect all other rights, and no candidate for president or any other elected office, Republican or Democrat, should be elected if they will not pledge to support full, meaningful voting rights. It should be that easy. You bet. Violence, voting, economic justice. Our task will not be complete until we ensure that every family, regardless of race, has a fighting chance to build an economic future for themselves and their families. We need less talk and more action about reducing unemployment, about ending wage stagnation, and about closing the income gap between white and non-white workers. And one more issue that is dear to my heart. It's time to come down hard on predatory practices that allow financial institutions to systematically strip wealth out of communities of color.